We start off in northern Taiwan, where prosecutors are investigating a Chinese man who illegally entered Taiwan in a speedboat. Initial reports said the man was fleeing persecution, but now Taiwan authorities say his actions are part of Chinese military pressure against the island. Louise Watt is live for us in Taipei with the latest. Louise, what do we know so far?
Leslie, this is a story that's been making headlines around Taiwan. A 60-year-old Chinese man arrived in a speedboat, reportedly wanting to defect to Taiwan because of messages he'd sent online criticizing the Chinese government. But as soon as this story broke, Taiwan officials expressed skepticism about his story. And this afternoon, Taiwan's Coast Guard has announced that this whole incident was an example of Chinese grey zone warfare against Taiwan. This is what they said.
中国大陆不断地对台湾也好，其他周边国家也好，从事灰色地带跟认知作战的这个部分，我也要呼吁国人要团结。 那对同心协力来对抗中国大陆这些不理性的侵扰。
Authorities say the man was previously a captain in the Chinese Navy. On Sunday morning, on a speedboat, he entered the Danshui River estuary in northern Taiwan. That's a river that leads to Taipei, and it's also an area that the Taiwanese military say could be vulnerable to a surprise Chinese military attack. The Coast Guard did seize the vessel and arrested the man, but only after he hit a ferry that was parked at a pier. The man is still in custody. The agency that oversees the Coast Guard revealed today that in the past year or so, there have been 18 similar incidents of Chinese boats approaching Taiwan, but most of those have happened near islands closer to the Chinese coast. So they think that this latest incident could well have been China trying to test Taiwan's defenses and China trying to gauge how good Taiwan is at spotting small boats.
Louise, there's been some criticism of the Coast Guard for not stopping the Chinese boat before it got close to land. What more can you tell us about that?
Yes, let's remember that the Coast Guard is responsible for safeguarding Taiwan's territorial waters. Now, they did spot the speedboat on radar when it was 6 nautical miles away from coast. And this sighting was flagged to the appropriate Coast Guard watchers. But it took them half an hour to identify the boat as non-Taiwanese. And when they did realize that, crucially, they didn't send out any patrollers to go and catch him before he reached shore. And they didn't know that he'd hit a ferry at the pier entrance until the operator of the ferry phoned them up and said, "My ferry's been hit." So authorities at a press conference this afternoon have said that the Coast Guard should have sent vessels out to find out the identity of this boat as soon as they spotted it on the radar. And as a result, they say 10 people who work for the Coast Guard will be punished. As for lessons learnt, the Coast Guard says that it's working with other countries on how to better spot small vessels and also how to monitor Chinese operations.